My house is too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards echoes, as if the silence itself were mocking my loneliness. 72 years old, and what do I have to show for it? Empty rooms, dusty photographs, and memories that feel more like dreams every day. Blurry, elusive. I raise the blinds and look out at the snow-capped mountains surrounding Kalispell. Elaine loved this window. "Million-dollar view," she used to say, snuggling against my shoulder in the evenings. 4 years have passed, and I still wake up and seek her warmth next to me for a moment. 4 years since cancer took her, and 1,460 days since I'm learning to live alone. My morning ritual is the same: coffee, toast, blood pressure pills. I haven't read the newspaper in a year, and the news isn't real anyway. My world has narrowed to this house on the outskirts of town, where I've lived for almost 3 decades. Other retirees are golfing, traveling on cruise ships, or babysitting grandchildren. I only have the company of an old retriever named Brewster, and he's almost deaf. My name is Fielding Abernathy, and I used to mean something in this town. I was the one who founded Abernathy Geoconsulting, a company that started with field surveys for private landowners and grew into the largest geologic evaluation consulting firm in the tri-state area. 37 years of my life I have invested in it. Every soil sample, every report, every expedition carried my name and my character. Meticulous, scrupulous, uncompromising. Elaine was my backbone. She did the bookkeeping for the first 10 years when we couldn't afford to hire full-time staff. Slept in the expedition van when we needed to save money on hotels. Never complained, even when I disappeared for weeks in the mountains, leaving her alone with little Wesley. Wesley, my son, my blood, my extension, and my biggest headache. From childhood, he was a smart boy, but he was restless. At school, teachers complained, "He's bright, but he's a throwaway. He needs a trick." I tried to give him that trick. I took him with me to the fields, explained how to read the earth, how to understand stones. Sometimes he'd light up, but more often he'd get bored. "Dad, rocks are just rocks," he'd say at 15. At 19, he left to study business in Seattle and only came back for the holidays. I didn't insist that he continue my business. Elaine always said, "Let him find his own way." But when he returned to Kalispell in his 30s with a wife and an MBA and expressed a desire to work for the company, I rejoiced. Maybe not with the most noble of feelings, vanity, but pleased. The son is coming back to take over the family business. Isn't that what every father dreams of? Patricia Shelton Abernathy. Even the name's pretentious. Wesley brought her back from Portland, where they met at some business conference. Tall, slender, raven wing hair, and cold gray eyes, studied marketing and external communications. She spoke in chiseled phrases, as if each word was a nail she was hammering into her interlocutor. "Your company is a rough diamond, Mr. Abernathy," she said the first time we met, looking around my modest office with geological maps on the walls. "Wesley and I will make a diamond out of it." Elaine was still alive then, though she was already sick. "Don't trust her completely," she whispered to me that evening. "She's the kind of person who always wants to be in charge." I brushed it off, figured it was just maternal jealousy, a desire to protect my place in my son's life. I know now that Elaine was right. She was always right. At first, the changes seemed reasonable. Wesley and Patricia insisted on moving the office downtown to a more presentable space. They updated the logo, launched a website, hired young professionals, an infusion of fresh blood, expanded services, diversifying risks. Patricia became director of marketing and communications. Wesley became COO, and I remained president of the company, on paper. "You wanted to spend more time with your mom," Wesley would say when I expressed my displeasure at not being committed to new projects. "We're just unloading you from your routine." Maybe they were right. Elaine needed me. Her condition was worsening, and I was spending more and more time at home instead of at the office. Of course, I was still working, reviewing reports, counseling on complex cases, meeting with key clients. But gradually, I was being moved away from decision-making. The process was so smooth that I didn't even notice how I turned into a wedding general. I came into the office 2 or 3 times a week, nodded my head at meetings, signed the papers Wesley slipped me. "It's just a formality, Dad," he'd say, and I believed him. Because he's my son, damn it. And because my head was occupied with something else entirely, how to keep Elaine in this world for at least one more day. When she left, it was like I woke up. I returned to the office a week after the funeral, determined to immerse myself in my work so I wouldn't have to think about the emptiness that was now my home, and found I wasn't welcome there. My office had been converted into an employee lounge area with a coffee machine and foosball table. My things were neatly boxed up and placed in a corner. The receptionist, not my faithful Doris, who had worked with me for 20 years, but some new girl with blue hair, looked at me with poorly concealed surprise. "Mr. Abernathy Sr., you weren't on the schedule. Mr. Wesley is in an investor meeting right now. Perhaps I can set up a time for you tomorrow?" "We'll set up a time for me, at my own company." Then I just turned around and walked away. Couldn't make a scene. Couldn't let the young employees, who probably didn't even know who I was, see me yelling at my own son. That evening, Wesley called, apologized, said they were preparing a surprise for me, a new office, bigger and better than the last one, that they weren't expecting me back so soon after everything, that they understood my grief, but maybe I should take another vacation, or even consider a partial retirement. "You've built a great company, Dad," he said in that special tone one uses with the elderly and the sick. "Now you can rest and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Parisha and I will take care of everything." I agreed, because I was broken, because I was too tired, because Elaine was no longer there to say, "Fielding, don't be a wimp." 2 months later, I signed the papers transferring controlling interest to Wesley. Parisha prepared the paperwork, smiled, poured the whiskey. "This is just a formalization of what is already de facto in place, Fielding," she said, calling me by my first name for the first time rather than Mr. Abernathy. "You are still the honorary president, and your opinion will always carry weight." I signed. What else could I do? Fight my own son? Sue? Elaine would have rolled over in her grave. 3 years have passed since then. 3 years in which I've gone from business founder and owner to an odd figure at family dinners. An old man who has smiled at condescendingly when he tries to talk about work. "Sure, Dad. Very interesting. By the way, have you heard about the new golf club?" The company is thriving, one must admit. Wesley and Parisha have expanded it, opening branches in Missoula and Boise, hired young, aggressive managers who seem to work 24 hours a day. We converted part of the business to environmental consulting, a trendy field these days. I'm getting generous dividends. "Wesley bought me a new car last Christmas. To keep you safe, Dad." Parisha is always inquiring about my health and recommending new doctors. They invite me to family dinners once a month where I sit at the head of the table, like a museum piece to be proud of, but that no one really wants. And now there's a card on my desk. Heavy paper, gold embossing. "Dear Father, I invite you to my 40th birthday party, February 21st, 7 p.m., Lakeside Terrace Restaurant. Tie required. Love, Wesley." Handwritten note in his son's sprawling handwriting. "Dad, this is going to be a special night. There's some news you're going to love. Don't miss it." News. What kind of news? Maybe grandchildren at last? Wesley and Parisha never talked about children. "There's still time," Parisha answered when Elaine delicately inquired. "Career first, then family." Elaine frowned but remained silent. I think that's how she left it, not believing she'd ever be a grandmother. Or maybe they decided to name a new corporate foundation after Elaine. That would be their style, a noble gesture that looks good in press releases. I twirl the card in my hands. Brewster comes over, puts his muzzle in my lap. His eyes are aglow with old age, but they still look devoted. I scratch him behind the ears. "What do you think, old boy? Should we go? Or call in sick?" Brewster sighs as only very old dogs can, with a philosophical humility to the stupidity of human questions. "Of course I'll go. He's my son. I love him no matter what. And maybe as he gets older, he's starting to realize something important. Maybe this special news is his way of reaching out, of restoring what we've lost. Or maybe I'm just an old man out of his mind, still clinging to the ghost of a family long gone." I set the card aside and stand up. I need to see if my dress suit still fits, and maybe buy a new tie. 40 years old son, That's a big date. I remember the day he was born, red, wrinkled, screaming, like he was angry at the world for pulling him out of his mother's cozy womb. Elaine used to laugh, just like you, stubborn. Now he's 40 and has his own life, his own plans, in which I'm an extra. And yet, I'm going to this dinner. I'll wear a tie. I'm going to smile. Because he's my son. And because, frankly, I have nothing else to do this Tuesday night. Or any other night. A brown envelope showed up on my porch 3 days before Wesley's birthday. No stamp, no return address, just my name printed on a white post-it. I spotted it after returning from a morning walk with Brewster. Inside was a flash drive and a note. Mr. Abernathy, I think you should see this. A well-wisher. At my age, anonymous messages are more irritating than curious. Probably some kind of spam, virus, or worse. I tossed the envelope on the kitchen table and went about my usual business. But in the evening, after a second glass of whiskey, the envelope began to seem more and more intriguing. What if it was really important? I pulled an old laptop out of my desk drawer, which I used only for looking at photos and the occasional letter to former coworkers. The flash drive contained a folder of files, accounting reports, internal correspondence, scans of contracts, all with the logo of Abernathy Geoconsulting. I looked through them one by one, and a chill crept up my spine. A picture of systematic fraud was unfolding before my eyes. Double bookkeeping, contracts with shell companies, bespoke environmental assessments, and everywhere Parish's name as the mastermind and coordinator. Wesley's name was also on it, but more as an enforcer. Honey, we need to revise the analysis for the Blackwood project. The client can't wait another month. Just change the date on an earlier version of the report and send it to them. I felt nauseous. A company built on accuracy and honesty had become a money-grubbing machine by any means necessary. Abernathy had always been known for its integrity, even when it cost us contracts. Elaine was proud of it. I was proud of it. The last file was the most disturbing. A plan to sell the company's major assets to a large conglomerate, including the parcel of land with the family home where I now lived. My home, which on paper still belonged to the company, a concession to tax planning once suggested by our accountant. In the cold light of the monitor, I realized I wasn't just being pushed out of management. I was about to be stripped of everything. Who had sent those files? My thoughts raced frantically. Perhaps one of the old employees fired by Parisha, or a current employee with a conscience. Did it matter? More important than that, what should I do now? It was past midnight when I dialed a number I hadn't used in over a year. Roger, it's Fielding. I'm sorry to call you so late, but I have a problem. A legal one. Roger Quinlan is my age, a lawyer and friend from college days. We started out together in Kalispell, he in a small law practice, me in geological research. He helped do the paperwork when I started the company. 7 o'clock in the morning at the Blue Jay? He asked after hearing a brief description of the situation. His voice sounded excited. Bring all the materials. The Blue Jay Cafe was one of the few places untouched by the modernization of downtown Kalispell. Old wooden booths, cracked tile, the smell of coffee and bacon that hadn't changed in 40 years. Roger waited in the far corner, almost the same as before, except his hair was all white and his face was covered with a grid of wrinkles. You look lousy, Fielding, he said instead of greeting me. You're not getting any younger either, I mumbled, sitting down across from him. We ordered coffee, and I handed him the flash drive. Roger pulled a laptop out of a worn leather briefcase, as old as mine. As he studied the files, I watched his face. First skeptical, then surprised, finally outright indignant. Jesus, Fielding, have they lost their minds? He shook his head. If half of this is true, they're in serious trouble. It's true, I said, but can I prove anything? And what am I supposed to do? Roger sipped his coffee, thinking. The documents for the transfer of the controlling interest. Can I see them? I handed over a folder with copies. He flipped through the papers, pausing to read individual paragraphs. Suddenly, his eyebrows went up. Interesting. He reread the page. Very interesting. What is it? I asked impatiently. Paragraph 17, subparagraph C. Have you ever read it? I shook my head. Like most people, I signed the paperwork after barely running my eyes over it. It says that if the company violates its original charter or misuses assets, you as founder have the right to revoke the transferred shares. That's an unusual clause. Who drafted this agreement? Parisha's lawyer, I muttered, remembering the tall man with the beard she'd brought in to sign it. Is he an idiot or? Roger hesitated. Or it was a deliberate loophole. Someone wanted you to still have leverage. What's the difference? I waved my hand. Could I use it? Theoretically, yes. Practically, you have to prove wrongdoing. Officially, with paperwork and forensics. We went into great detail. 3 hours and 4 cups of coffee later, we had a plan. Roger contacted his contacts, an accountant auditor and a corporate law expert. I signed a power of attorney authorizing them to examine the company's finances. They will begin a silent review, ostensibly a routine audit at the request of a minority shareholder. When did you say your son's birthday was? Roger asked, gathering the papers. 3 days from now, in the evening. Perfect. We'll have the preliminary results by then. But don't spook them, Fielding. Act normal. I grinned. Normal. As if I could pretend I didn't know about my own son's betrayal. But I have to. For the plan. For retribution. By the way, who sent you those files? Roger asked, standing up. I have no idea. That's odd, he said. Someone really needs you to know about this. Someone who has access to internal documentation. This isn't an accident, Fielding. Someone is using you. Or helping me, I objected. Maybe, he shrugged. Either way, be careful. And keep me in the loop. I spent the next few days in a fog, calling old contacts, gathering information about the company's current projects. I thought a lot about my son. Wesley was never a bad kid. Wayward, yes. Spoiled, maybe, but not abusive. When he returned to Kalispell with Parisha, I was sure he wanted to continue the family business out of respect for me and love for his mother. Now I realized it was Parisha's idea. She saw the company as a stepping stone, an asset that could be squeezed out and sold. And Wesley, let her. Maybe out of weakness of character. Maybe out of love for her. Or maybe my Elaine had been right when she'd whispered to me in those last months, he's always been jealous of you, Fielding, always wanting to prove he was better than you. I remembered how angry Wesley had gotten as a teenager when I missed his school performances because of work. How resentful when I criticized his grades or his choice of friends. How he grew more and more distant as he left for college and then Seattle, calling less and less often. Deep down, I always knew that I didn't love him enough. Or more accurately, not in the way I should have. I loved the idea of a son, a successor to the business, proud of his successes when they met my expectations. But did I accept him for who he was? Did I understand what he needed? Elaine used to say, you're too demanding. He just wants your approval. I'd wave it off. Approval has to be earned. Maybe I deserved what I got. A son who sees me not as a father, but as an obstacle. Who's willing to take away my house and sell my company to prove what? His worth? His power over me? Either way, it was too late for self-reflection. The deed was done. The betrayal was done. Now all I had to do was protect what I could still protect. The night before my birthday, I got a call. Mr. Abernathy, this is Anna Tate, Mr. Roger Quinlan's assistant. Her voice sounded formal, as if she were reading a prepared text. We arranged this in advance. No names, no details over the phone. Yes, I'm listening. Mr. Quinlan asked me to tell you that the documents you requested are ready. They confirm your assumptions. All of them. He'd be happy to discuss the details in person the day after tomorrow. Would 10 o'clock in the morning suit you? Yes, quite, I answered, feeling my heart pounding against my ribs. Thank you for the information. So, everything checks out. Financial fraud, double bookkeeping, document fraud. Enough evidence to activate paragraph 17. I didn't sleep much that night, going over my options. Roger advised me to gather all the evidence first, then call Wesley and Parisha to a meeting, give them an ultimatum. Civilized, businesslike. Don't get emotional, Fielding. This isn't a family matter anymore. It's a legal matter. But I knew I couldn't hold back. Not after everything I'd learned. Not after seeing their true faces. By morning, I decided I would use my birthday. I would go public with my decision to take back control of the company. Make them explain themselves to all the guests, partners, and friends. Let everyone see who they really are. Maybe it was petty. Maybe it was unprofessional. But damn it, I've earned the right to this little revenge. Birthday. I chose the dark blue suit that Elaine always referred to as my power suit, tie to match, rock crystal cufflinks, a gift from my wife for our 30th anniversary. I combed my thinning hair, shaved off 2 days of stubble. The mirror reflected an old man with a tense face and a determined look. No longer the same Fielding Abernathy who dutifully signed the papers and retreated into the shadows. No. Today I was reclaiming my name. I checked the inside pocket of my jacket once more. A flash drive with copies of all the documents. The papers from Roger, all in place. "I'm coming, Elaine," I whispered into the emptiness of the room. "I'm going to fix everything. Bring back what we've created together." I don't know if she heard me, but I wanted to believe that somewhere she was nodding approvingly and saying, "Finally, you stubborn old man. It's about time." I locked up the house, gave Brewster one last pat, and got in the car. I turned on the navigator even though I knew the way to Lakeside Terrace, one of Kalispell's most pretentious restaurants. Parisia's choice, no doubt. Wesley favored barbecue and beer. Along the way, I thought about what would happen afterward, about how life would change when I took control of the company again. Would I be able to run it like I did before? Would I want to? Or will I just sell it myself, but on my own terms? And what would happen to Wesley? I wouldn't hesitate to fire Parisha. But my son, he's still my son, no matter what. Maybe it's not too late to make things right. Maybe when he sees what I'm capable of, he'll finally respect me. Stupid thoughts of an old man still clinging to the specter of family relationships. But I couldn't push them away. The restaurant glowed with lights, illuminating the snowdrifts around the parking lot. I could see the guests' expensive cars, hear the music coming from the open doors. The festivities had already begun. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a minute, gathering my wits. Today was going to change everything. Today I would finally put an end to this story. It's time to go. Time to meet my son and his wife. Time to remind them who Fielding Abernathy is. The Lakeside Terrace was lit up like a Christmas tree in the middle of February. The doorman met me at the entrance and accepted my coat with feigned helpfulness. I adjusted my tie and took a deep breath. There was live music coming from the auditorium, something jazzy, too modern for my taste. Wesley was waiting in the lobby, surrounded by some people I didn't know. My son, tall like me at his age, only broader in the shoulders. Dark hair already streaked at the temples, sharp features from my mother. As a child, he hated his nose. "Too big," he complained. Now that nose gave him a solidity he seemed to recognize and cultivate. He noticed me, apologized to his interlocutors, and headed toward me. A smile, a firm handshake, a clap on the shoulder just like a textbook, how to behave with an elderly father. "Dad, glad you could make it. You look great." That was a lie. I saw my reflection in the mirror at home. I looked like a man who hadn't slept well in a week. Tired eyes, sunken cheeks, deeper wrinkles than usual. "Happy birthday, son." I handed him a small box, the Omega watch my father had once given me, a family heirloom. Wesley opened it, and for a moment something real flashed in his eyes, recognition. Maybe even gratitude? "Thanks, Dad. This is, unexpected." He smiled strained and tucked the box into his pocket without putting on his watch. Of course. Why would he need an old watch when he already had something Swiss and undoubtedly 3 times as expensive on his wrist? "Is Parisha here yet?" "Yes, she's greeting the guests." He waved his hand toward the main hall. "Come on, she'll be glad to see you." I doubted, I thought, but I followed him. The banquet hall was decorated in blue and silver colors, with elegant floral arrangements on each table. About 50 guests and some faces I recognized. Many I was seeing for the first time. Business partners, city bigwigs, a few old family friends. Parisha reigned in the center of the room, wearing a champagne-colored dress that accentuated her slender figure. At 42, she looked 35, the result of strict dieting, exercise, and perhaps a little help from plastic surgeons. She spotted us and swam closer, like a shark smelling blood. "Fielding, How nice of you to come. She pecked the air near my cheek. That suit suits you. Retro's in right now. I bought it 10 years ago, so it's retro now. It's beautiful. Parisha. It's a beautiful evening, I nodded, looking around the room. It's a great turnout. Even the mayor honored your presence. The mayor of Kalispell, Richard Hansen, stood at the bar sipping whiskey. We'd known each other since high school, but we'd never been close. Oh, Richard and I are working on several municipal projects, she smiled. Business and politics always go hand in hand, don't they? I didn't say anything. I was growing irritated inside at her condescending tone, at her ostentatious hospitality, at the fake atmosphere. Come on, your table is in the center, next to us. She took me under the elbow, as if I were a frail old man in need of support. Everyone was already seated. I sat down in my assigned seat. On the right, the Hansons, the mayor and his wife. On the left, an empty chair. Opposite, Wesley and Parisha. The perfect setup for a family confrontation. Dinner passed excruciatingly slowly. The conversations around me were a muffled hum. I ate mechanically, unable to taste the exquisite dishes. All my attention was focused on Wesley and Parrish. They were sitting with their shoulders slumped against each other, occasionally whispering and glancing at me. Getting ready for their big announcement? After the main course, Parisha tapped her fork on her glass. The sound echoed through the room, conversations quieted, and all eyes turned to her. Dear friends, Wesley and I are so happy to see you today. On this special day, her voice sounded honeyed, the professional tone of a seasoned orator. 40 years is a milestone, a time to take stock of the interim results and make new plans. Wesley sat beside her, smiling like a proud child. It always amazed me how he turned into an obedient boy around her. Where is the cocky, independent boy who argued politics with me, refused to cut his hair according to the dress code, and once stole my car to impress a girl? Parisha continued. Wesley and I have some wonderful news to share today, a new phase in the growth of our business and our lives. She paused spectacularly, circling the guest with her gaze. A real actress. Abernathy Geo Consulting has always been a part of Kalispell's history. Founded by the esteemed Fielding Abernathy, she nodded in my direction, and several guests turned around as well. It thrived because of his vision, and under Wesley's leadership, it had gained new momentum. I clenched my fists under the table. Hypocritical bitch. And today we're pleased to announce a new partnership. Northwest Resources Group Corporation is acquiring controlling interest in Abernathy Geo Consulting. This will allow us to go national, opening offices throughout the Pacific Northwest, and we're going to start by developing a parcel of land in the Summers Bay area. She made a sign and a map appeared on the big screen behind her. I recognized the outline immediately. A piece of land owned by the company, the same one where my house stands. The project would include a luxury apartment complex, a golf club, and a marina. Summers Bay Resorts is the new face of Kalispell. Applause broke the silence. Guests smiled, nodded, raised their glasses. No one seemed to notice my pale face. My home, my land. 30 acres of woods where Elaine and I plan to grow old together. Where the urn with her ashes is buried, under the old oak tree she loves so much. In closing, I want to say, Parisha suddenly noticed that I was standing up. Oh, Fielding, do you have anything to add? The whole hall turned toward me. I could feel their eyes on me, curious, expectant. Does the old man want to make a toast? Or is it time to take him home? Yes, Parisha, I'd like to add something. My voice sounded hoarse. I coughed. This project, Summers Bay, it's about the land where my house stands. Parisha smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Of course we've taken that into account, Fielding. You'll be offered compensation and assistance in relocating. A nice apartment downtown, perhaps? Closer to medical facilities and... No, I cut her off. I'm not selling this land, and I'm not moving. Wesley stepped forward, his voice conciliatory but tinged with impatience. Dad, we'll discuss the details later. This isn't the time or place. When is the time, Wesley? When the bulldozers come to demolish the house where your mother's buried? There was an awkward silence in the room. Someone coughed. Wesley turned black. You're exaggerating as usual. No one's going to... I'm not finished. My voice got stronger. I will not consent to the sale of the land. What's more, I will not authorize the sale of the company. Not now, not at any time in the future. Parisha forced out a condescending smile. With all due respect, Fielding, your consent is not required. Wesley owns the controlling interest, and the deal is already— No, Parisha, you're wrong, I interrupted her again. Wesley no longer holds a controlling interest. I found, irregularities. Serious violations of corporate ethics and the law. And according to paragraph 17 of our agreement, I have the right to revoke the transferred shares. Parisha's face froze. For the first time in all the years I'd known her, I saw fear in her eyes. Baitin, what kind of violation? What is this nonsense? Wesley, your father is clearly— Double bookkeeping, I said loud enough for all the guests to hear. Document fraud. Proprietary environmental assessments. You know what I'm talking about, Parisha. I have all the evidence. Total silence. Even the musicians stopped playing, watching the drama unfold. I saw Mayor Hansen leaning over to his wife, whispering something. I saw several businessmen exchange worried glances. Saw Wesley turn pale as he looked at his wife. Parisha was the first to come to her senses. She stood up, tall and straight as a spear. Fielding, you have chosen a bad moment for your fantasies. We'll discuss it later in the family circle. Right now, I think you should— You think it's a fantasy? I pulled a flash drive out of my pocket. It's a copy of all the documents, your emails, instructions to change report dates, instructions to set up shell companies. You think your friend the mayor will like it when this hits the press? Hansen shuddered and set his glass aside. Parisha's face contorted with rage. You old, out-of-your-mind fool, she hissed. Get out of here before I call security. Don't you dare talk to my father like that, Wesley interjected. And for a moment, hope flared in my chest. But he added, Dad, you really should go home. You're not yourself. We'll talk about it tomorrow, I promise. Out of sorts? I grinned bitterly. I'm fully myself for the first time in years, son. And I'm not going to let you sell what your mother and I have spent a lifetime building to some corporation that's going to turn it into a golf club for the rich. That's enough. Parisha slammed her palm on the table. This is getting ridiculous. Guess I apologize for this scene. Fielding hasn't been at his best lately. We suspect, early signs of dementia. The words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt the blood rush to my face. Dementia? You're accusing me of dementia to cover your shenanigans? Fielding, look at you. Her voice became mellifluous with fake sympathy. You barge into your own son's birthday party with some crazy accusations. It's not normal. Maybe you should see a specialist. The only specialists working right now are the auditors checking your books. I cut him off. And believe me, they'll find all your dirty secrets. Wesley jumped up. Enough. You have no right. This company is mine now, and I will do with it as I see fit. Yours? I looked him right in the eye. Have you ever done any field research? Have you ever written a report from start to finish? Do you know how to read the earth? How to listen to rocks? No. You just come in and take what others have made, like a vulture. Wesley's face contorted with rage. It's always the same. Always you thought I wasn't worthy, not good enough, and now you wonder why I want to go my own way. Your way? Selling the family company to a corporation is your way? Or is it your wife's idea? Leave Parisha out of this. She's the only one who believed in me, the only one who saw my potential. Unlike you, always judging, always dissatisfied. The pain of his words was sharper than I expected. Somewhere deep inside, I knew he was right. I never knew how to express my love and pride. Always demanding more. Never praised for what I had accomplished. Elaine told me that, and I didn't listen. But it was too late for regrets. Too late. I'm stopping this deal, Wesley, I said firmly. Starting tomorrow, I'm going back to running the company. All of your machinations will be investigated. And I swear on your mother's memory. Parisha didn't let me finish. She grabbed a plate of birthday cake off the table, a huge tiered cake with a silver number 40 on top, and threw it right in my face. I didn't have time to duck. The cream, the biscuit, the berries, it all ended up smeared all over my face, my suit, my shirt. I was blind for a moment, feeling only the sweet mass on my skin and the smell of vanilla in my nostrils. There were exclamations of surprise in the hall. Someone gasped. Someone laughed nervously. And it was Wesley who laughed the loudest. My son, my boy, laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. His father covered in cake, humiliated, ridiculed. Slowly, trying to maintain my dignity, I wiped my eyes with a napkin. I saw Parrish's face red with anger. I saw my son laughing. I saw the shocked guess. And then I said something that silenced the entire room. As of tomorrow, I'm taking back my 51% stake in the company in accordance with paragraph 17 of the transfer agreement. I have already filed the appropriate paperwork. The deal with Northwest Resources Group is canceled. And you two, I looked at Wesley and Parisha, can either work under my rules or find new employment. And Parisha, I paused for a moment, I have copies of your correspondence with the contractors, the one where you asked me to change the environmental sample results. I think the state's attorney will be very interested in that information. Parisha's face went pale. Wesley stopped laughing. There was dead silence in the room. I turned and walked toward the exit, feeling the cream from the cake dripping down my neck past my collar. But my back was straight and my step was firm. In that moment, I was fielding Abernathy again, the man who built a company from the ground up, who never gave up or compromised, who always stood up for what he believed in. And even though I was covered head to toe in cake, I felt like a winner. I was almost to the door of the restaurant when I heard hurried footsteps and Wesley's panting voice behind me. Wait, Dad, stop! When I turned around, I saw my son, confused and disheveled, as if he had run a marathon instead of crossing the banquet hall. Son, what the hell were you talking about? What paragraph 17? It's impossible. You can't just... Behind him, I saw movement. Parisha was coming toward us too, moving between the tables with the grace of a panther ready to pounce. Her face was no longer pale, but rather blotchy with anger. Let's go out, I said, nodding toward the small meeting room next to the check room. There's no need to continue the guest show. Without waiting for a response, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was small with a round table and a few chairs. The walls were decorated with gaudy watercolor landscapes meant to create atmosphere in this plastic paradise for business meetings. Wesley piled in next, followed by Parisha, who quietly shut the door. Her composure had always fascinated me. Even now, she managed to look like she was in control of the situation. You've ruined everything, she began without preamble. Do you know how many months we've been working on this deal? How many nerves and resources we've put in? And you come in and ruin it in 5 minutes because of your senile vindictiveness. Parisha, Wesley said warningly, but she waved it away. No, stop coddling him. We tiptoed around your precious daddy for years. And what did we get in return? Accusations and sabotage. I remained icily calm, even though the cream from the cake kept dripping down my neck. I took a handkerchief out of my pocket and wiped my face as best I could. Finished? I asked. Then let me explain paragraph 17 to your husband, since it's obvious you didn't bother to fill him in on the details of the deal you arranged. Wesley frowned, shifting his gaze from me to his wife. What's he talking about, Parisha? I didn't let her answer. When you got the controlling interest, son, there was a special clause in the agreement, paragraph 17, subparagraph C. It provided for the possibility of withdrawal of shares if the new management violated the company's charter or misused the assets. That clause is a mere formality, Parisha interjected. It has never been applied and cannot be applied without evidence of wrongdoing? I took a flash drive out of my jacket pocket and put it on the table. I have all the proof I need. Double-entry bookkeeping, falsified environmental audit reports, your personal instructions to alter soil sample results for the Riverbend project. It's all here. Parisha turned pale again, but quickly pulled herself together. This is illegally obtained material. You had no right to... I didn't hack into your systems, if that's what you mean. Someone sent me copies, anonymously. Maybe your employees aren't all as unscrupulous as you think. Wesley sank down in his chair, wrapping his arms around his head. Is it true? He asked quietly, looking at Parisha. Did you falsify the reports? She hesitated for a split second. I did what was necessary for the development of the company. Small compromises that didn't hurt anyone. That's what everyone does in business. Everyone fakes environmental impact assessments. I raised an eyebrow. You have an interesting idea of business practices. Don't exaggerate, she snapped. We weren't dumping toxic waste into the lake. We just accelerated some processes. It doesn't matter what you call it. I tapped my finger on the flash drive. The fact is, these are documented violations, and they activate paragraph 17. Wesley looked up. But even so, you can't just cancel the Northwest deal. The paperwork's already done. The prepayment's been received. I can, I interrupted, and I've already done it. My lawyer, Roger Quinlan, sent them a formal notice this morning that the company had changed management and canceled all the preliminary agreements. Quinlan? Parisha grimaced. Is that dinosaur still practicing? Enough to recognize shenanigans when he sees them, I parried. And yes, I've already filed the paperwork to restore my rights as a majority shareholder. As of tomorrow, I'm back in charge of the company. Wesley jumped up. You can't. I won't allow it. I ran this company for 6 years, turned it from a provincial office into a regional business. We've tripled our revenues. We've opened new lines of business. And you want to throw it all away because of some bureaucratic ploy? For the first time in years, I saw real emotion in my son's eyes. Anger, resentment, fear. Something in me trembled. Maybe he was actually proud of his accomplishments. Maybe it wasn't all a cynical calculation. Wesley, I said more gently, I'm not denying your accomplishments. But look at what's going on. You and Parisha are ready to sell the company, my house, the land where your mother is buried. And for what? Money? You've got enough. This isn't about money, Parisha interjected. This is a strategic partnership. It's about taking it to the next level, an opportunity to create something much bigger than your family firm. And for that scale, you're willing to commit forgery? I shook my head. That's the difference between you and me, Parisha. To you, the company is a tool. To me, it's a legacy. Something I built not to sell for more money, but to leave something meaningful behind. Wesley listened with clenched teeth. Contradictory emotions struggled in his eyes. Dad, he said at last, I understand your affection, but you can't hold on to the past forever. The world changes. Business changes. Either you evolve or you die. And does evolving necessarily involve deception? I asked quietly. He looked away. It's not that clear-cut. Exactly, Parisha interjected. The world is not black and white, Fielding. You're stuck in your outdated notions of honor and principle. And modern business requires flexibility. Flexibility is one thing, I said. Breaking the law is another. And yes, I know the world isn't black and white, but there are some things you can't cross. Lines that can't be crossed. I pulled another envelope from my inside pocket and placed it on the table next to the flash drive. Here are copies of all the evidence, notarized, as well as the official notification of my return to company management. You can challenge this in court, Wesley, but then all your shenanigans would go public. I don't want that. I don't want to bring shame to the Abernathy name. But if you make me, Parisha grabbed the envelope, tore it open and pulled out the documents. Her eyes quickly scanned the lines. Her face grew tenser with each passing second. It's a bluff, she said at last, but her voice betrayed uncertainty. You can't prove. I already have, I interrupted. Rogers assembled a team of the best auditors and experts. They've studied all your schemes. We have testimony from the former CFO you fired 2 years ago. There are copies of the altered reports and the originals you tried to destroy. There's everything. Wesley sat back down as if his legs were no longer holding him up. Jesus, Parisha, what have you gotten us into? She turned sharply toward him. Me? You were privy to every decision. Don't you dare pretend now that you didn't know anything. I knew that we were optimized some processes, he stammered. Not that we were forging documents. Optimizing, forging, what's the difference? She splashed her hands. The result is the same. And you were happy to receive dividends when our profits were growing. Their bickering continued, and I watched with a feeling close to devastation. There they were, my son and his wife, the people I had entrusted with my life's work. Now they looked more like squabbling teenagers trying to blame it on each other. There was a quiet knock on the door, and a young waitress looked into the room. Many are already leaving and are asking if there will be a continuation of the evening. Parisha straightened up, instantly putting on a mask of professionalism. Of course. Tell them we'll be back soon. A little family misunderstanding. As the door closed, she turned to me. You have to leave, now, and take these ridiculous accusations with you. We'll talk tomorrow when you've cooled down and started thinking rationally. I'm not going anywhere, I said calmly, and my accusations will remain. And so will my decision to take back control of the company. Then I'll sue you, she leaned over, leaning on the table. For defamation, for misappropriation of confidential information, for... Stop it, Parisha, Wesley said tiredly. You know he's right. If this evidence is real, we're in deep shit. She straightened, looking at her husband with frank contempt. You're giving up? Just like that? Without a fight? What do you suggest? He spread his hands. To sue my own father? Let all this dirt come out? Let us both get our licenses revoked and maybe even prosecuted? Parisha was silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. I could see her mind frantically running through the options, calculating the odds and risks. Finally, she straightened up and looked at me with cold fury. What do you want, Fielding? What is your price? Price? I shook my head. I'm not bargaining. I'm giving back what is rightfully mine. The company I built, the house where I live. And what's going to happen to us? Wesley asked. Will you throw us out on the street? Destroy us? Something in his tone, a mixture of defiance and underlying fear, reminded me of his teenage years, when he'd get caught up in a prank and look at me with the same expression. Go ahead and punish me. I know you want to. I'm not going to destroy you, I replied. You can continue to work for the company, but on my terms. No fraud, no falsification. Honestly. Under your control? Parisha specified. Exactly. She laughed, but there was no mirth in her laughter. You really think we'd agree to that? To be your puppets after all you've built? The choice is yours, I shrugged. Either work by my rules or look for a new place. With your experience and connections, it shouldn't be hard to find something suitable. Unless, of course, the fraud story gets out. It's blackmail, she hissed. No, Parisha, it's a consequence of your own actions. There was a growing rumble of voices outside the door. Some were loudly demanding explanations, others offering to call a cab. Wesley's birthday had finally turned into a farce. Wesley rubbed his face with his hands. What should I tell the guests? The truth, I answered. That there was a business disagreement, which we will solve in the family circle. Apologize for the incident, thank them for their presence, and say goodbye. And then we'll continue this conversation. Tomorrow, at my house, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We haven't agreed to your terms yet, Fielding. No, I nodded, but you'll be there. Because the alternative is far worse. I stood up, feeling my knees aching. Age does take its toll, especially in times of stress. I think I'll go home now. I need to change. I pointed to the cake-stained suit. And yes, Parisha, I'll send you the dry cleaning bill. I headed for the door, but stopped with my hand on the knob. One more thing. If you decide not to show up tomorrow or pull any stunts, all the paperwork goes automatically to the DA's office and the IRS. I've set up automatic forwarding, so, see you tomorrow. I walked out without looking back. The hall was in chaos. The guests were packing up, the waiters were standing with full trays, the musicians were packing their instruments. The festivities were definitely not going well. Mayor Hanson caught me at the exit. Fielding, what the hell is going on here? Is it true about the shenanigans? Ask Parisha, I said. Shortfilm. Or better yet, ask your own inspectors who turned a blind eye to the violations. By the way, did I mention that the reporters already have copies of the documents? It was a bluff, but from the look on his face, a very good one. Look, Fielding, we're old acquaintances. Maybe we should talk about this. Tomorrow, Richard. I patted him on the shoulder. All questions tomorrow. I went to the check room, got my coat, and walked out into the cold February night. The snow crunched under my feet, the fresh air clearing my head after the stuffy atmosphere of the restaurant and the nervous confrontation. After getting into the car, I sat for a few minutes just staring at the lighted entrance of Lakeside Terrace, where guests kept coming out. Some stopped to discuss what had happened, Others hurried away, as if afraid of being involved in a scandal. My son and his wife never showed up. Apparently, they stayed in that meeting room, trying to come up with a plan of escape, or at least a dignified retreat. I started the engine and drove slowly out of the parking lot. The first round was left to me, but the war was just beginning, and I knew Parisha wouldn't give up so easily. She would look for loopholes, pressure Wesley, manipulate, threaten. She was in her element. And Wesley, what would he choose? Will he stay loyal to his wife, or will he remember that he is my son after all? Would we ever be able to rebuild what had been destroyed? I didn't know the answers. All I knew was that I wouldn't back down again. For too long, I'd let them wipe their feet on me, push me aside, pretend I didn't matter anymore. This night changed everything. And no matter what happened tomorrow, I knew one thing. Fielding Abernathy was back, and this time I wouldn't let anyone take from me what was rightfully mine. The morning was clear and frosty. The sun reflected off the snow so brightly that it stung my eyes. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping strong coffee and looking over the papers Roger had sent with the courier. Official confirmation of my reinstatement as a majority shareholder. Provisional for now, but legally binding until the case was fully adjudicated. Brewster lay at my feet, occasionally sighing in his sleep. The old dog was barely audible, but his presence gave me a strange calm. At least one living thing in this world was unconditionally loyal to me. The phone rang at 11 sharp. Wesley's number. "It's Wesley's number," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Dad, we need to talk." He sounded tired, like he'd been up all night. "Before we meet." "I'm listening." "Not on the phone. Can I come over?" "Alone." I hesitated. A ruse? Trying to catch me off guard while there are no witnesses? "All right, I'll see you in 30 minutes. Hanging up the phone, I walked to the window. We'd grown so far apart over the years that I automatically expected my own son to do something to me. The sad reality of our relationship. Wesley arrived 27 minutes later. I watched his silver BMW drive carefully down the driveway, as if he was afraid of hitting something in the way. He'd always been a careful driver, even as a teenager. Unlike me, Elaine was always scolding me for sharp turns and sudden stops. He entered without knocking, as he always did. At least it was a childhood habit. Wesley looked rumpled with his expensive coat open, red eyes, stubble on his cheeks. "Coffee?" I offered. He nodded and strode into the kitchen, automatically opening the right cabinet for a mug. Despite his infrequent visits, he still remembered the arrangement of things in the house where he'd grown up. We sat down at the table. Brewster came over, sniffed his shoes, and returned to his seat at my feet. "Does Parisha know you're here?" I asked, breaking the long silence. "No." He sipped his coffee. "She thinks I went to the office to clean up the mess from last night. Do you?" He set the mug down and looked at me straight on. "Dad, I want to understand what you're really after. Revenge? Control of the company? Or do you just want to destroy everything Parisha and I have built?" "I want what's mine back," I answered calmly. "The company I founded, the house I live in, the respect I deserve. And to do that, you had to make a scene in front of everyone? Humiliate us in public? How else was I supposed to stop a deal I wasn't even notified about? A deal that would deprive me of the house where your mother is buried?" He looked away. "We would have found a solution. We would have moved the urn, built a memorial." "Do you hear yourself?" I shook my head. "Elaine wanted to stay here, under the oak tree we planted when you were born. She loved this view, this air, this silence. And you were willing to destroy it all for, what? Money? Prestige?" Wesley clenched the mug so hard his knuckles turned white. "For the development of the company. For the future. You wouldn't understand that. You've always lived in the past. The past that created everything you have," I retorted. "The company, the reputation, the fortune. It's all built on the foundation your mother and I laid. And I'm grateful for that. But time marches on, Dad. We can't stay a family firm from the last century forever. The market's changing. Competitors are closing in. Northwest offered resources, connections, national exposure. At the cost of losing its independence, at the cost of compromising principles." He snorted. "Principles don't pay the bills." "No," I agreed, but they define who you are. And if you're willing to sell your soul for money, how are you different from a mercenary? Wesley leaned back in his chair. That's it. You think I betrayed you. Betrayed the company. Sold out. You don't? I looked him in the eye. You let Parisha manipulate you, convince you of questionable methods. You turned a blind eye to falsification, forgery, fraud. This is not the Wesley I raised. The one you raised? His voice became harsh. When exactly did you raise me, Dad? When you were away on expeditions for 2 months at a time? Or when you only came home to sleep a few hours between projects? Or maybe when you criticized every choice I made, every decision I made, because they didn't meet your expectations? The words hit me like a slap in the face. There was a bitter truth in them that I preferred to ignore. Yes, I was absent a lot. Yes, I demanded too much. I thought that strictness would make him stronger, more successful. But maybe it just alienated him from me. I did the best I could, I said quietly. Work to give you and Mom a better life. To build something meaningful that would one day pass to you. You were building an empire, not a family. He grinned bitterly. And you wonder why I grew up the way I did. We were silent. A flock of birds flew past the window, their shadows sliding across the snow. A dog barked in the distance, and Brewster lifted his head, but couldn't hear because he was deaf. What do you want from me now, Wesley? I asked at last. Why did you come here? He sighed. I want to propose a compromise. Parisha doesn't know I'm here. She won't agree to your terms, thinks we can challenge your evidence, delay the case in court, buy time. And you? I'm tired of the war, Dad. I've spent my whole life trying to prove to you that I'm worthy, that I could run this company as well as you, that I could be successful in my own way without copying you. And you know what? I did it. The company's growing. Profits are up. Yeah, there have been, compromises, but the result speaks for itself. A result built on lies has no value, I said. To you, maybe, he shrugged. But I'm not you, and I never will be. Get over it. I looked at my son and remembered holding him, a newborn in my arms, teaching him how to ride a bike, how I sat by his bedside when he was sick. When did it all go wrong? When did we become strangers? Maybe when he went to middle school and I missed his first major speech because of the expedition. Or when I criticized his choice of college because I thought he was capable of more. Or when I didn't support his decision to study business instead of geology. 1,000 little moments, 1,000 missed opportunities. And now we're sitting across from each other like business partners instead of father and son. What compromise do you propose, I asked. You come back to the company as chairman of the board, a symbolic position, but with real veto power over key decisions. I remain CEO. We're backing out of the Northwest deal, but we're looking for other ways to expand, without selling the land on which this house stands. We're stopping all questionable practices, back to honest business as you've always demanded. The offer sounded reasonable, almost tempting, but something made me wary. What about Parisha? He hesitated. She's leaving operations. She'll remain a marketing consultant, but without signing authority or access to financial decisions? And she's okay with that? No, he shook his head, but I'm going to make her make that decision, for the sake of the company, for our future. I studied his face, trying to see how sincere that promise was. Could he really go against Parisha's will? The man who'd shaped his decisions all these years? Why should I believe you, Wesley, after everything that's happened? Because I'm your son, he answered simply. And because, despite our differences, I still respect what you've created, what you taught me. Honesty, perseverance, dedication. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I always wanted you to be proud of me. There was something so sincere, almost childlike in his words that I felt my heart clench. Maybe all was not yet lost. Maybe we could still rebuild what we destroyed. I need to think, I said, and talk to Roger. So, of course, he nodded, but we have until 2 o'clock, before we meet. And if I refuse, then Parisha will go all in, he sighed. She's already contacted her lawyers. They're preparing an incapacity suit. What? She claims you're showing signs of dementia, that you're incapable of judgment and decision-making. They're going to find doctors to confirm that. They'll arrange for an evaluation. I felt anger rising up inside me in a wave. That's absurd. Anyone who talks to me for 5 minutes will realize that I'm sane. I know. He held up his hands in a conciliatory gesture. I'm not saying they're right, but they can delay the process, create doubt, block you from doing anything until the forensics are done. In the meantime, the Northwest deal will be finalized. And you're going to let her do that? Declare your father incompetent to steal the company? Wesley gave me a long look. No, that's why I'm here. I'm offering a solution that will save face for all of us. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered yard. So many memories are tied to this place. This is where Wesley took his first steps. This is where Elaine and I sat on summer evenings, planning for the future. This is where I buried her when the future was gone. I'll do it on one condition, I said without turning around. You personally guarantee that this land will never be sold or developed, that my house will remain untouched for the rest of my life. Agreed, he answered quickly. And one more thing. Parisha must personally apologize to the entire company for falsification and deceit. Wesley grimaced. Dad, that's too much. You know her. She'd rather die than no deal. I turned to him. I'm not asking for public humiliation, just an admission in front of the staff that mistakes were made that will not be repeated. He stood up with his hands in his pockets. I'll talk to her, but no promises. I'll see you at 2 o'clock. I nodded toward the door. Suriname, with Parisha and Roger. When he left, I sat still for a long time, staring at the closed door. Brewster rested his head in my lap, and I stroked him, lost in thought. Could I trust Wesley, or was this just another ploy designed by Parisha? To play the good cop, make me believe in reconciliation, and then stab me in the back? Feelings fought within me. Fatherly love versus business pragmatism, hope versus bitter experience. I wanted so badly to believe that my son was sincere, that he really wants to make things right, that somewhere deep down inside he is still that boy who once proudly declared, I'm going to be like you, Dad. But life has taught me caution, especially when it comes to people who have already betrayed you once. I called Roger and told him about Wesley's offer. It sounds like a trap, he muttered into the phone, especially the threat of incapacitation. Typical when you've got nothing to back it up. But if he's sincere, I asked, if this is a chance to settle this peacefully, it's your decision, Fielding, but I'd insist on additional guarantees, a written agreement, notarized, and a clear description of the consequences for breach. After the conversation, I went into the living room and pulled an old photo album out of the cupboard. I flipped through the yellowed pages, stopping at the pictures that captured our family at the best of times. Wesley at graduation, Wesley receiving his college diploma, Wesley and Elaine on a picnic. When and how did I lose touch with my son? Why did I let him become so distant that he began to see me as an obstacle instead of a support? Maybe I was too strict, or too busy, or too focused on my standards to see that he needed something different. Not criticism, but acceptance. Not expectations, but support. But was it too late? Could I have gotten back the son I lost years ago? Or would we be strangers forever, bound only by business and memories of the woman we both loved? I closed the album as the clock struck 2:30. Time to make a decision. Time to come face to face with Parisha and Wesley. Time to find out if my son was truly ready to choose me over the woman who had manipulated him all these years. I put on a fresh shirt and jacket. I combed my hair. I looked in the mirror at an old man with stubborn eyes and deep wrinkles. Wrinkles from worry, from loss, from loneliness. Hang in there, old man, I said to my reflection. One more fight. Brewster walked me to the door, tail wagging. I leaned over to scratch him behind the ears. I'll be back soon, buddy, and hopefully with good news. But something told me it wasn't going to be good news, that the real battle was just beginning, and that Parisha wouldn't give up as easily as Wesley hoped. I got in the car and started the engine. There was a confrontation ahead that could either destroy my family for good or give it a chance at a new beginning. And it all depended on how much I could trust my own son. The Abernathy Geo Consulting office had changed beyond recognition in the years I'd been away. Open space with transparent partitions, fancy furniture, a break area with a coffee machine that the young receptionist said cost as much as a used car. Traces of Parisha are everywhere, from the minimalist logo on the wall to the live plants and stylish planters. I arrived 15 minutes before the appointed time. Roger was already waiting in the meeting room, a small glass box in the center of the office, visible from all sides. Opacity as a concept. Ironic given the opacity of business practices in recent years. "Ready?" Roger asked, shaking my hand. He was wearing an old-fashioned tweed suit that made him look like a professor from the 50s. "More than ever," I replied. We took seats on one side of the long table. Roger laid out the documents in perfect order before him: agreements, evidence of violations, the official notice of return of control. All clear, all legal. At 2 o'clock on the clock, the door opened and Parisha entered. Impeccable business suit, strict makeup, not a hint of yesterday's rage. She was followed by Wesley, pale and tense. "Fielding," Parisha nodded coldly. "Mr. Quinlan." I noticed that they sat at opposite ends of their side of the table, a physical expression of discord between them. Wesley avoided looking in my direction. "I assume you've thought over our proposal," Parisha began, "and you have an answer." "I do." I looked at Wesley. "I agree to the proposed terms, with some additions to be outlined by Roger." Roger coughed. "Fielding returns as chairman of the board with veto power on all strategic matters. Wesley remains CEO with operational management authority. Parisha Abernathy steps down as director of marketing and strategic development, but can remain as a consultant without signature authority or access to financial information." Parisha tensed but said nothing. Wesley cast a quick glance at her, but she didn't turn around. "In addition," Roger continued, "Abernathy Geoconsulting is backing out of the deal with Northwest Resources Group and assuming all associated costs. The land at Summers Bay, which includes Fielding's home, is being removed from the company's assets and retitled in his name as private property. All shares in the company remain in the family and cannot be sold to third parties without the unanimous decision of the board of directors." Parisha curled her lips. "That's absurd. You are effectively blocking any development of the company and depriving us of maneuverability." "On the contrary," I argued, "I guarantee that the company will remain family-owned, that its assets will not be sold off piecemeal for immediate profit, that the legacy Elaine and I have created will be preserved." "Legacy?" she snorted. "We live in the 21st century, Fielding. Successful companies need to be flexible, ready to transform, and you're trying to mothball a business like a museum piece. If flexibility means dishonest methods, then yes, I prefer stability and principles," I countered. "And from what I've learned, your flexibility has already brought the company to the brink of legal trouble." Wesley finally spoke. "We've accepted the terms, Dad, but we also have demands. First, no legal action against Parisha or me. No investigations, no charges. What's happened will remain in the past, provided all questionable practices cease," Roger clarified. "Of course," Wesley nodded. "Second, we must have complete freedom in operational management. No micromanagement, no interference in day-to-day decisions." "I agree," I said, "as long as those decisions don't conflict with the overall strategy and ethical principles." Parisha crossed her arms over her chest. "What about the apology you demanded?" Wesley told me. "They remain a condition of the deal," I replied firmly. "You have to admit to the team that mistakes were made that won't be repeated." "Never again," she cut me off. "I will not humiliate myself in front of my employees. It would undermine my credibility." "Then there's no agreement," I shrugged. "And we go to Plan B, a full audit investigation, possible legal ramifications, a public scandal." Wesley ran his hand nervously through his hair. "Parisha, maybe we should—" "No," she turned to him, her eyes narrowed. "You promised you'd solve this, that you could convince him. Obviously, you failed." There was a tense silence in the room. I watched them. The crack in their relationship was becoming more and more visible. Maybe for the first time in years, Wesley saw his wife's real face. Calculating, ruthless, selfish. Suddenly, Parisha straightened up, smiled her trademark businesslike smile, and turned to me. "All right, Fielding, you win. I apologize to the team. I'll admit, business mistakes. But in return, I want a guaranteed severance package and a letter of recommendation. If I'm leaving with dignity. Now it was my turn to be surprised. I expected more fierce resistance, legal threats, even personal insults, but not such swift acquiescence. Why such sudden acquiescence? I asked bluntly. She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. I'm a businesswoman, Fielding. I know when to fight and when to retreat and regroup. Right now, the battle isn't worth it. I didn't believe her for a second. That woman never admitted defeat so easily. She was up to something. But what? Roger must have been thinking the same thing. We insist on a full accounting of all current projects, contracts, and financial obligations of the company, and a freeze on all transactions pending a full audit. Naturally, Parisha nodded. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. Wesley looked as puzzled as I was. Clearly he hadn't expected this. Parisha, are you sure? Absolutely, darling, she patted his arm. Sometimes you have to admit defeat to move on. Family business, family decisions. I understand. We spent the next 2 hours discussing the details of the agreement. Roger prepared a draft, which was tweaked, signed, and certified. By evening, the news of the change in management was to be announced to all employees. When we were finished, Parisha stood up first. Well, I guess that's it. I'll pack up my things and prepare the paperwork for the handover. Wesley, are you coming? My son hesitated. I'll catch up with you. I want to talk to my father some more. She shrugged and walked out, heels clicking on the marble floor. Perfect posture, head held high, not a hint of defeat. She's up to something, Roger said as the door closed. It's too easy. I agree, I nodded. Wesley? My son looked away. I don't know. She didn't share her plans with me. She just said she'd handle the situation. And you believed her? What was I supposed to do? He turned to me. She's my wife. We've been together over 10 years. And I'm your father. I've been your father your whole life. I looked him in the eye. If she's planning something against me or the company, I hope you choose the right side. Wesley didn't answer. Roger tactfully gathered his papers. I'll go prepare the final version of the documents. I'll see you tomorrow, Fielding. When we were alone, Wesley finally looked up. Do you really think this will work? That we can work together after everything that's happened? I don't know, I answered honestly, but I'm willing to try if you are too. And if I don't? If I decide to leave with Parisha? The question hit me harder than I expected. Despite all our differences, all the betrayals and resentments, I couldn't imagine the company without Wesley, without my son, my heir. It's your choice, I said quietly. I won't hold you back, but the company will stay in the family, even if you leave. And who will you leave it to? You have no other children. Then she will die with me, I answered simply. I'd rather let her disappear than become what Parisha turned her into. Wesley stood up and walked to the window. Behind the glass was a view of the snow-capped mountains of Kalispell, the same mountains I'd studied for decades, every slope, every rock. You know, I always wanted you to be proud of me, he said without turning around. Even when I rebelled against you, even when I did everything against you, always waiting for your approval, your recognition. I know, I said, and I'm guilty of not giving it to you often enough. But I've always been proud of you, Wesley, always loved you. Even when I didn't agree with your decisions. He turned, and for a second I saw in his eyes the boy he'd once been. Searching, unsure, hungry for fatherly approval. I have to go, he said, blinking. Parisha's waiting. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He walked out without looking back, and I was left alone in a glass box, surrounded by an office I had created but no longer recognized. A week later, I was officially back in charge of the company. Parisha kept her word. She publicly apologized to the team for some decisions that may have jeopardized the company's reputation, dryly, formally, without sincere remorse, but enough to honor the terms of our agreement. And the next day she left, packed up her things, took the severance pay due, and left the building without saying goodbye to anyone but her assistant. Wesley stayed, quiet, withdrawn, performing his duties with mechanical precision. We worked in the same building, sometimes sat in the same meetings, but it was as if a wall had grown between us. Professional courtesy had replaced family relations. He didn't go to Parisha, as I feared, but he didn't really come back to me, hovering somewhere in the middle, in his own limbo of uncertainty. A month later, I learned that they had sold their house and were living apart. Another month later, rumors reached me that Parisha had received an offer from a rival firm in Seattle. Wesley didn't mention it, and I didn't ask. And the company. The company was doing well. Strangely enough, after all the turmoil, after returning to honest business practices, our position only grew stronger. Clients valued our reputation, our history, our principles. What Parisha thought was a disadvantage turned out to be our greatest advantage. One evening, 3 months after my return, I stayed late at the office. Everyone had gone. Only the light in Wesley's office was still on. I knocked and peeked inside. He was sitting at his computer, concentrating on some graphs. "Am I interrupting?" He looked up. "No, come on in. I'm just going over the preliminary research results for the Midvale project." I sat down across from him. "How does it look?" "Promising, but we need more tests to be sure." "Additional tests are good," I nodded. "Better to be safe than to be wrong." He smiled weakly. "Yeah, I remember. You always said that." We were silent. Outside the window, the snow was beginning to fall, large flakes swirling in the light of the street lamps. "Parisha filed for divorce," Wesley said suddenly, not looking at me. "She flew to Seattle last week, accepted Pacific Geotech's offer." I didn't know what to say. Regret? Rejoice? I chose neutral. "How are you?" "I'm fine," he shrugged. "I guess it was bound to happen sooner or later. We're too different." "It's hard," I said quietly. "The end of a relationship is always hard." He nodded. "Yeah, but, you know, in a way, it's a relief too, like I can finally breathe fully." I understood what he meant. Parisha was a strong personality, dominating, controlling. Next to her, Wesley was always in the shadows. "What are you going to do next?" I asked. "Work," he smiled a little wider. "Focus on the company, on making it better, in the right way." "I'm glad," I said sincerely, "and proud of you, Wesley. Really proud." His eyes widened for a second, as if my words were something unexpected, precious. Then he lowered his gaze, hiding his emotion. "Thanks, Dad." That night I came home with a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe not all was lost. Maybe in time Wesley and I could rebuild what we had destroyed. Not all at once, not quickly, but gradually, one step at a time. 6 months passed. Spring came, the snow melted, revealing the verdant mountainsides. The company moved forward steadily under our joint leadership. Wesley was in charge of operational issues. I was in charge of strategic decisions. We learned to work together, respecting each other's strengths. But true reconciliation was still a long way off. Too many unspoken things remained between us. Too many old wounds that were in no hurry to heal. One April day, I was sitting in my new office, not a glass box, but a spacious room with a view of the mountains. Old oak desk, leather chair, geologic specimens on the shelves. A little old-fashioned, but comfortable, in my opinion. There were 2 photos on the table, Elaine on our wedding day and little Wesley with his first bike. Reminders of what really matters, of what I'd lost and what I still hope to get back. I watched the sunset coloring the mountains in red gold tones and thought about all the decisions that had brought me to this moment, about compromises and principles, about victories and defeats. I had gotten my company back, protected the legacy I'd spent a lifetime building, but at what cost? A complete break with my daughter-in-law, a fragile, formal relationship with my son. Was this victory worth it? I didn't know. All I knew was that I had done the right thing, protected what I believed in, stayed true to myself and to Elaine's memory. And maybe in time, Wesley would understand. Maybe one day we'll be father and son again, not just business partners. Maybe. In the meantime, I sat in my office alone, with the bittersweet taste of victory on my lips, watching the last rays of sunlight gild the peaks of the mountains I'd studied all my life. Mountains that stood here long before me and will stand long after I am gone, unchanging, eternal, indifferent to the human dramas at their foot. I pulled an old watch out of my desk drawer, the same one I'd given Wesley for his birthday, which he'd returned to me a month ago with the words, "You should keep it until you decide I really deserve it." Maybe one day I'll give them to him again. when I'm sure he realizes their true value. Not as an expensive accessory, but as a symbol of continuity, of responsibility, of loyalty to principles. In the meantime, they will lie in my desk drawer, counting down the time that will perhaps heal our wounds and give us back what we have lost, time that I, at my age, did not have much of.